What's up, everybody? My name is Steven. I'm the host of the ACC Podcast from Astrarizon Ventures. Excited and honored to introduce to you the very first founder from our series, The Founders Stories. Today, we are joined by Mathieu Baudet, the CEO and founder of Linera, a blockchain infrastructure that is focused on enabling scalable and efficient decentralized applications. Before founding Linera, Mathieu was a researcher and engineer with experience in distributed systems, including time spent at Meta, aka Facebook. He is known for his contributions advancing blockchain scalability and secure system design. Mathieu, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, Stephen. Yeah, doing very good. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Where are you speaking to us from?
So I'm French. When I started the company, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
and now I live in New York.
Yeah, as you just said, you used to be in San Francisco, and I understand that you were once involved with the Libra project that came from Facebook. So that might be at least something that many people are aware of.
Yeah. So I had been at Facebook as a infrastructure software engineer for a couple of years when I got the opportunity to join Libra as one of the first engineers, so kind of a founding engineer, if you want. And I stayed there basically the whole time until almost until the end. It was a lot of fun. We like great team, like really strong, like awesome people there, and I was able to work in the early days with Sam Bakshir. Sam Bakshir was now a co-founder of Sui, inventor of the Move language, and I was one of the first to work on the blockchain protocol that was used there by Libra, and that had some kids. For moments was in production at Aptos, and so it was a good time. But yeah, fortunately, we were super, obviously at the time we were like, this is it. We're gonna bring the blockchain to a billion people, and that didn't happen. But I think a lot of good came out of it.
Yeah. So what exactly did happen? As you said, you were trying to bring that to a billion people through Libra. My understanding is that Libra came into a lot of both regulatory as well as some political challenges and kind of led the project to kind of fizzle out. So what can you say about that? What happened to Libra?
I mean, look, you'd have to interrogate David Marcus. I mean, that was the head of Libra. I mean, the head of at least the Facebook part of Libra back then. But yeah, there was a lot of political headwinds, to say the least. It was, I don't know, it was a bit of a pity, but on the technical side, I can say just we were ready. We had built the whole thing, and we were just just waiting to get the green light, basically from the US government, essentially. And that green light never came. We thought, I think there were moments where they were they were like letting us hope, and then at the last minute they would typically say, no, actually we changed our mind. So it was really it was kind of like really hard times for, especially for the leadership. So a lot have changed since then in the US. So it's nice to see like crypto getting a lot of support nowadays.
Yeah, definitely more support these days doesn't necessarily contribute to the market conditions being better. But I understand that Linera has been backed by several key players, one of which that's more popular is A16Z. Is that correct?
No, I was very happy to be able to um, take an investment from A16Z Crypto as one of as the lead investor for the very first round. Just when I was starting the project. And they've been super helpful.
Very cool. So yeah, we're not here just to talk about Libra and your past, although that really does help set the stage for what led you to creating Linera. That's kind of my next question there. What were some of those key takeaways that you learned while you were in Libra, or maybe things that you even learned before? What led you to being interested in cryptocurrency and blockchain, whatever term you'd like to use? But yeah, just back up and tell us a little bit more about your story that led there.
I mean, my journey is essentially like from a technical point of view. I was very, I was really immediately fascinated by the technologies. Blockchain technologies are. I mean, I have a PhD protocol in distributed systems, in security systems, and back then there was no blockchain, so we were looking at deploying security protocols um, that were like TLS, for instance, like securing internet transactions or securing messaging, but there was no money involved. It was sort of like a bit dire in a way, and then suddenly blockchain happens, and the ambition is to transform the internet in this sort of financial warehouse that belongs to everybody, and so that was immediately, and using these really cool protocols, these really cool technologies that allow you to create trust out of nothing, basically, out of just internet connections, right, and computers. And so yeah, I immediately found this like really interesting, and wanted to be part of it.
Very cool. So, I mean, just before we move on from there, whenever you were a kid, was there anything you imagined that you would be doing whenever you grew up? Were there any little hobbies, little toys that you just got obsessed with and kind of maybe gave some insights in hindsight that make more sense to where you are
Right.
today?
So yeah, I don't know. So some people, they have like a dream job, like, I don't know, policeman or fireman or something like that, and then they think again, and they're like, maybe they choose something else, or maybe they choose fireman. But I know, but in my case, so I think the fun part is I was immediately really drawn to science, and in particular computer science. And so as soon as I could get my hand on a personal computer back then, and trying to, and I was like trying to learn how to code, like with books, and coding like small things, and that was, yeah, I was immediately into it. And there was a magazine I loved that, I think it's called Scientific American in the US, and at the time it had actually a really good section on like nerding out on computer things, like the game of life for people who are into computer science, and so as a kid I was like really fascinated. So just immediately wanted to program what I was reading when it was simple enough, and then yeah. So basically, if you asked me, back then, what do you want to do? I was like, oh, I want to be a researcher in computer science. Basically, that was the answer.
I love that. It makes a lot of sense, and I mean, just as you're speaking, the look on your face, the enthusiasm with the words that you're using and talking about, it's clear that this is very much a passion of yours, and that speaks to me. So I know that that's going to speak to the viewers as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. And moving on from there, so from a kid, you had the interest, you took the time learning, building that foundation, which led you to, studies in a PhD and to, an opportunity with Libra, and then now to Linera. So what can you tell us, just, high view, high level, what worked, what didn't, and why did you create Linera? Why do you believe Linera is needed?
So basically, what happened is that soon after we built the first version of the Libra protocol, and it was being so the research was kind of done on that front, and now there was an engineering team working really hard to productionize everything. But I found myself, thinking with some of my colleagues, okay, so we did this protocol, we followed the state of the art in blockchain protocols, and it's gonna work up to a point. What happens if we actually get a billion user pounding on this thing, trying to get like a massive amount of transactions from all over the internet at once? And so this is where we started, thinking about more ambitious, in a way, more ambitious designs that would draw from research ideas, to scale out the protocol. And so back then, with my colleagues, um, George Genesis, Alberto Sonino, who are now at SUI, we thought, well, let's start with the payment system. Can we make a decentralized payment system scale infinitely? And turns out there was a way. There was a way in the literature that seemed to indicate that was in fact possible. And you really had to depart from the traditional blockchain execution model. So you would have to be a highly parallel system, and so we designed that, wrote a prototype, and that was a research paper we were very proud of, called FastPay. And then we thought, like, okay, this is cool, but it is only payment. So it was just a payment. It was only a payment system. So our colleagues were like, okay, this is noise. We'll call back when you need you. And then it stayed there, kind of in the fridge for several years. And then when basically just before starting Linera, I started thinking again about this project, and I thought, like, it would be so cool to be able to generalize that, and really, like, so now, like, go way beyond payments and get this, like, really decentralized infrastructure, like decentralized computation platform that would scale out, be able to take how many transactions you need from all over the internet, but also be programmable, right? So have smart contracts and the ability to power applications, not just way beyond payments. And that's basically how Linera started. That's a major generalization, like very ambitious generalization of this research paper. And we introduced some key concept like the microchains, that is now the basis of Linera, and we've been building ever since.
That's awesome. So the microchains you just touched on there, I understand that's kind of a key component of Linera that helps it stand out from all the other different blockchains that are in existence right now, which there are more and more every day. So could you dive just a little bit more into microchains, definition, and kind of like the unique approach of microchains? Explain them in more rational terms, maybe for a user that doesn't know much about blockchain or has never heard about microchains before.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, you know what? I mean, you were asking me about when I was a kid, and so even before that, like when computers were invented, they were not called microcomputers. There were no such thing as personal computers, and definitely not smartphones back then, right? So, like when my parents, they were in their early career, there were mini computers, and they were like mainframes, and all the computation had to happen on a mainframe, and people would have terminals, maybe use punch cards, or tapes. But the important thing is that computers were big, and they were like central, and they were like a single point that was going to handle all the transactions, all the processing that people would need, at least in this building, for instance, right? And so that was immensely useful. Including for accounting, by the way. Like all the big companies, they had a mainframe to automate this kind of systems. And but it was not mainstream. Like people couldn't really access. Like at home, you wouldn't have a computer; it would be too big, too expensive. And so what happened in the history of computer science is that people started thinking, "Oh wow, can we make those computers smaller and actually give a computer to everybody?" And this was the beginning of the trend of personal computers that some people actually called microcomputers. And the reason you have microprocessors is because they were meant for microcomputers. And suddenly you give computational power to people in their home, and so they can, and that opened the door for many applications. Obviously, spreadsheets, word processor, like Word, like so replacing a typewriter, and then people put that into a network. It became the internet essentially, and then of course smartphones happened on top of that. And so the thinking with microchain is like, can we bring in blockchain we're creating a new type of computation that you could call transparent computation, if you want. So essentially we're trying to allow the internet or like the network or computations to talk about value, to talk about money. And for that, you have to make the computation transparent. So you have to create trust so that everybody knows that these computations that are handling assets, they are following some rules that were agreed upon. Like you're not creating money, for instance. So we in a way, you can see blockchain as creating a new type of computation that we can call transparent computation. But and it started with Bitcoin, right? So it was a single chain of blocks with amazingly elegant protocol very simple, like very that really captured the imagination, and was the first time we were proving that you could use the internet to create trust out of thin air and power a ledger and power a cryptocurrency. And then people added programming to that with Ethereum, and this is where the transparent computation is starting to emerge. But it was still running on a single chain, a single big chain, which is kind of like a mainframe. This is where I'm going. Okay, so nowadays, when you have a single chain that is designed to handle lots of transactions, what you're telling people is like, hey, we're going to have one place where the transparent computation is happening. It's on one chain, like a big, and we want this chain to, be, so we're going to design it to be able to take a lot of transactions. But there's always a limit, because it's basically like a mainframe. It's big, but there's always a limit. So with Linera, the mindset is like, can we actually create a medium, create a notion of personal transparent computation? So give everybody some ways to have their own blockchain, their own chain of blocks where they can do transparent computation, and it's as secure as a normal blockchain. But now it's closer to me, and I can have my reserved block space, so I can basically talk to my personal chain whenever I want. If I want to start a computation or transfer my assets, I know it will always be there for me. Always talk to me. I don't need to compete for resources with other users. And suddenly you realize that that's the way to bring the power of Web 2, the scalability that we used to have in the normal internet. That's the way to bring that to blockchain. So nowadays, when you use your Facebook account, it's always there. It's always because Facebook can always add more machines inside the data center. You're using Google Maps, it's working. Like you're in traffic jam, everybody around you may be using Google Maps, and it's still working because the system in the big players, they know how to increase the data centers, they know how to increase the number of machines, and that's the revolution where you're starting to use ideas of personal computing and cloud infrastructure, and that's how you scale the systems we know. So now, when you give everybody their own chain, we can do the same thing. We can suddenly scale the computation, make it much closer to people, and also much more scalable, and suddenly guarantee like a quality of service and make just transparent computation feel like it's just working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that concept, transparent computation, made me just kind of think about a question for you, just to hear of just why do you think, Web3 was necessary, this transparent computation? I have obviously, or not obviously, but I have my own reasons, my own use cases for cryptocurrency, blockchain, and I'm curious to hear from you, Mathieu. Consider me a skeptic. Why do we need cryptocurrency? How come Web2 doesn't work? This, as you just said, the infrastructure that's there, it works. The people who know what they're doing, they know how to increase the data, the workload. Why do we need this? What's the benefit, and why should it expand globally?
Right. Yeah. So I think there's different ways to go about it. And for instance, the answers, the early days of Bitcoin and Ethereum, people had this dream to create a cryptocurrency without a government. So that's one way to approach crypto. Historically speaking, people were using these decentralized systems to try to turn the internet into a financial power where there's no government, and so it was kind of a dream, like some kind of a political statement also, in a way. And then thinking, what's interesting is that from there, people starting thinking about, okay, this is interesting because, okay, so now we're creating trust between all those people, all those users, just using computer and like connectivity, essentially, right? And what can we do with that, and maybe we'll also find with maybe you'll find with usual currencies, like but what's interesting, I think, with decentralization, with the transparent, what I call transparent computation, what's interesting is just the wealth of, like, just the opportunity to innovate. In my view, you can really create those systems, create new financial systems over the internet, and experiment with a set of rules, experiment with a particular market. Like you create a market, you create a financial exchange with a number of, and then suddenly the stakeholders can meet and they can innovate there without any intermediate that would be in a position to take control over this thing that you're creating. So it allows you to create really those networks of users and providers and those multi-sided markets that can be invented, and tested, and it's kind of the possibilities are infinite. You can really, like, a new network. Essentially, somebody has an idea, they can invent a new protocol, and they can launch it and see if suddenly that and when you launch this new thing, because it's running on this transparent platform, people can immediately trust that it's trustworthy. They can immediately believe, okay, these are the rules. So maybe I want to participate, maybe I don't want to participate, but if I participate, I know exactly what to expect, because it's like the code is low, as people say in blockchain. So suddenly we have this extremely secure platform that's innovating, proposing a certain protocol for people to do something. Of course, most of the applications in nowadays, they are about assets, like so storing value, exchanging values, creating products, financial products. But there are also ideas of using blockchain to create networks where people put devices in common. So if you want to, so this is what's called decentralized physical infrastructure. So the idea would be like, I have a computer and maybe some GPUs in my living room, and I want to make a bit of money out of it. So I can connect all of that to a network that is going to act as a broker and allow maybe startups to train machine learning models partly on my computer. And so you see that there's a market, there's a network that puts me in touch with a startup in this case, and but this network doesn't belong to anybody. This is the beauty of it. So I can really trust that it's going to do a fair job putting me in touch with my users, and I know the rules are not going to change. Things are immutable, and so when you want to create a platform and you want to attract users, whether they are professional or consumers, being able to create immutable rules for your network is a very powerful tool. I mean, basically, it all boils down to that. When you don't have immutable rules, what can happen is what happened to Zynga on Facebook. So Facebook created this network, but it was not a decentralized network. It was a private company. And then they're like, oh yeah, we'd like people to build on top of Facebook. Please come. And so Zynga creates a company that's doing games on Facebook. And then one day Facebook says, well, you know what? Actually, we don't think it's a good idea to have games on Facebook. Sorry. And then Zynga is out of business. And so this is the, from a theoretical point of view, this is the difference between a decentralized network and a private network. In a private network, things can change overnight. And if you were basing your business on this particular network, you could be left to hang, basically, left dry. I don't know how to say that. You could basically you can just cry.
Yeah. Something changes overnight and you're just out of luck. Thank you for sharing about the personal reasons that you think cryptocurrency blockchain is necessary for kind of, the next stage of possibilities to emerge. So of course that brings us back to Linera. You were mentioning earlier, before I tangented off and asked you about some of those fundamental reasons you think blockchain should exist, needs to exist, both for financial systems, for governments, and so forth. We were talking more about microchains, the kind of distinctions that Linera is bringing to the table versus what is already in the market. You were talking about scalability and how important that is for users to come and adjust parameters as they see fit for whatever use case they're trying to fill the needs for. How flexible are microchains? How easy are they to get going with them? And then specifically, how does Linera manage to balance scalability without sacrificing security?
Yeah, all good questions. So the way you can look at Linera is, on one hand, is a standard proof of stake decentralized infrastructure. So it's powered by by what we call stakes. So you have a network of what we call validators, so a network of nodes, and they have locked up a certain amount of assets in Linera tokens, and they follow the rules. They contribute to the security of the system. So by validating what we call validating the chains, so making sure that every block that is created in the system is correct and unique. We know we can trust them because they have this stake, and there would be consequences if they were trying to cheat, and also it wouldn't work because you would need an overall majority of them to make any before anything bad happens. So this is the standard proof of stake concept, okay? And we have lots, and it's starting to be actually standard in the industry. So except for Bitcoin that says using what's known as proof of work, we've seen most of the chains out there using proof of stake because it's greener, it's just also faster. But what people didn't maybe realize is that it gives you also a lot of flexibility in how you organize the blocks of your chain. And so what we do with Linera is instead of having a single chain with large blocks, we like to structure block space into lots of tiny parallel chains with potentially small blocks. And we call each of them microchains. But we also want those chains to be able to talk to each other, and we want the messages between the chains to be very cheap, to be potentially also carrying assets, so that there's a unified liquidity between all the chains. And for that, we made the choice to have all the chains having the same level of security, the same level of finality, and essentially having only one set of validators for all the chains. And that, in fact, is a new idea, because as a consequence of validators, they are going to be we're going to ask them to be elastic. So we're going to ask them to be able to take some load. So if all the chains suddenly are active, the validator is going to have to work a lot. So for that, and we are designing them so that it's possible for a Linera validator at any time to add new computational power. So to just in the back end, without anybody knowing, a Linera validator can add more machines to take the load. And in a way, the vision is that a Linera validator could be like a small Twitter. Like there's a front end, there's a pool of workers that can be upsized or downsized depending on whether it's peak hour or not. It's using the ideas of cloud infrastructure that have been so successful in Web 2 for each individual Linera validator. And so the beauty of that is that suddenly you get very strong security. You get you get a replicated, you get your transparent computation where the validators are staked. So you get proof of stake. The usual notion of proof of stake totally applies, and you can have the same decentralization characteristics of any other blockchain out there. And then you get, of course, the horizontal scaling and the low latency and just the quality of service that people are used to in Web 2.
You mentioned Sui and Aptos. What is your history with working on Sui or Aptos?
Okay, so I know some of the founders very well. They were my ex-colleagues, and they know about Linera. I've been also invited to present our protocol on several occasions. What we announced recently is a partnership with Walrus, the data storage layer of Sui. So we are going to, and so we're very excited about this. Well, first, Walrus is a great data availability layer, so we're going to use it for our own needs. And then we're also very happy to make it available to our own users inside Linera, so for Linera applications, to be able to store and consume large blobs of data. And then we also are very happy to create those bridges with the world of Walrus so that Walrus users can use Linera for data validation. So using Linera as a layer that essentially allows you to make computation happen on top of the blobs, which is something that usually hard to do. and as a block for a normal blockchain, and that it's relatively easy to do inside Linera. So that's a really good partnership that we just announced just a couple of weeks ago.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was asking about that specifically just to gain some understanding, but didn't realize that you guys had just announced a partnership with them. So huge congrats on that. That definitely sounds like it's going to be synergistic between the Linera and Sui teams. But my purpose in asking that was, establishing better understanding of your relationship, and this, could lead into a broader conversation about politics within the world of blockchain, cryptocurrency technology. Who should use what chain and why? What am I supposed to do with all these different chains? How do I know which one to choose and why? So there's a much longer conversation that we could probably get lost in, that have a lot of opinions baked into, which always feel free to share your tangented ideas or thoughts about these concepts and questions. But my question to you, Mathieu, is just why Linera versus Sui at Aptos? Say I am in those communities, I just learned about this partnership with
Right.
Linera. Why would I want to dive into Linera and either learn more about it, or maybe I want to, transition my business or my web application over to Linera? Could you compare for us Linera versus Sui or Aptos, and maybe use that as an opportunity as well to speak on the developer engagement and capabilities that you offer those developers?
My answer to this is that people interested in building new blockchain applications, what we want is providing them with new tools and then letting them choose. And potentially, what we're seeing is that it could be a combination of Linera and another blockchain, for instance, that brings the best results. And so, for instance, you could imagine SUI users. They're running. I'm taking like let's say we are interested in running chess on like chess tournaments on chain, right? So you could have the tournament engine, the leaderboard, all like the central state of the tournament. For instance, you prefer to have that in Sui, that's totally fine, and you will benefit from the programming model where you have a single chain. And so it's a programming model that is relatively standard in the world of blockchain. So people may prefer that for storing a centralized state, and then maybe using blobs for I don't know, like taking images of the candidate or something like that. And then, but then maybe you want the chess games to be on chain, and you want them to be really fast and supporting really quick moves. Yet you want the whole thing to be decentralized. And so this part, for instance, you would do on Linera. Through some work we're going to do, the idea you'd be able to spin a chain for a particular game of chess, and then suddenly the two players would be connected to that particular chain, like a chess game chain, a chess game chain, and they would create tiny blocks with one move per block. And Linera is actually a real-time decentralized system that would really like help you do that. And that's with end-to-end security, decentralization. So like kind of like super strong security for your chess moves. And so for instance, we've built in push notifications inside the system, and we are executing the blocks inside the browser. So you would know that the state of the board that you're seeing on your browser is actually the one that is on chain. And you don't need to trust any third party. For instance, RPC providers usually are used by they are necessary to power user interface in the world of blockchain, but in Linera they are not. In Linera, you can actually display the data that you computed locally, and so they are way more trusted. And that's also helping you do this real time like updates and real time interactions between the user. So this is an example. And then of course you can replace chess by micro auctions, any kind of financial activity that involves low latency trading between a few people, for instance. So So that's a picture, for instance, where you see that we collaborate with existing layer ones. So in this example, SUI, but we would be very happy to work with other major layer ones and create those hybrid applications. And yeah, just I think builders need to study what's out there and see what works for them, what's working for them, and we really think that we are proposing things like features that are very novel and very unique. And I'm sure that people will understand. I mean, people who are like have these kind of problems, they will realize that they can put part of their application on Linera.
Wonderful. So before we jump to kind of the next section of questions that will focus on user and builder engagement, what makes you so proud of Linera? What is Linera doing that makes you feel so confident and so impassioned to put your name on it and all of the other people who are working on it?
Yeah, so with Linera, we are we've built a new type of decentralized uh, infrastructure that gives users their own chains, their own personal chains. We think that's a major building blocks that has been missing in the world of computing, in the world of transparent computing in particular. That's opening doors for more real-time applications, more secure applications, more scalable applications, which is something that we think has been missing.
Yeah, love it. Cool. So moving on now, kind of towards more user and builder actionables. What can users do right now?
Yeah, so we are in testnet phase. We're about to launch a new version of a new testnet, actually, that's going to have like some really interesting features, in particular, a web client framework. So, like a full features web client framework for the first time that is going to help builders create those interactions that I was mentioning with end-to-end security and real-time latency. The and then yeah, there are going to be a number of test nets, and then we're going to go mainnet. Hopefully sometime this year, and we're working really hard on it for sure. The whole framework is already there. We have built an amazing community, having really good moments, presenting the features and getting builders excited and prototyping their apps on Linera already. And we just launched we keep launching like initiatives to encourage people to test out Linera and create new projects. So follow us on Twitter and find us on Discord to learn the latest ones. And yeah, just reach out to us if you're a builder.
What would you say are some necessary building blocks that any developers should have before coming into Linera? Basically, how can developers get started with Linera?
Right. Okay. So we currently we offering a Rust SDK. So if you know Rust, then you're in good hands. Our SDK is a very nicely designed set of Rust libraries that you can use to build Rust to build linear applications, and then on top of that, you can build a UI using your favorite web frameworks. We also adding support for Solidity, and so very soon people will be able also to use Solidity to build. So that's the language of Ethereum, right? The prime language of Ethereum to build linear applications. So that's also going to be a big deal, especially for those that have large amounts of large code bases, that they want to import. Maybe something in a protocol, a DeFi protocol that is being used in other contexts already. So we're making it easier and easier to program applications in Linera.
So when it comes to the overall impact of Web3, how do you believe that Linera will really begin to activate and shape the future for builders, for everyday users?
Yeah, I would say maybe one way to summarize Linera is we're the best platform to pioneer new use cases of blockchain technologies. And we've seen so much success of blockchain in with DeFi, so decentralized financial protocols, and it's so successful that in a way, from my point of view, most of the existing blockchains out there are kind of hyper optimized for DeFi. But there are so many cool ideas out there, like using decentralized physical infrastructure, using like decentralized AI, decentralized social networks. And when you look at the way those new concepts, those new paradigms, the way they work, you realize that they actually want to scale out. They need a lot of computational power. And usually you can see that their goal is they need to scale out because like a social network, for instance, your goal in life is to have 1 billion users there, right? So imagine you have 1 billion users using a social network and it's decentralized. So they want to display the news feed, they want to post. You need a big engine and a really, really scalable engine to power this. And the first thing you don't want to do is to force all the interactions of your users to be on a single chain of blocks. And in fact, when you think about it, it's much more natural for the news feed of a user to be managed on a separate chain. And that's exactly what we're proposing. Like out of the box in Linera, you want to create a decentralized social network. Our users, they already have a chain. That's the way Linera works. Every user has have their own dedicated chain, no matter what. So obviously, you're gonna use that chain to power your newsfeed, and you get that for free. It's there. And then obviously, when they post a newsfeed, you want the subscribers of a user to be notified, and you also get that for free. So whenever we look at these new use cases of blockchain, every time I'm like, oh well, this would work so well in Linera. Like this is exactly, like the design that scales out is to have one chain per user, one chain per device, one chain per chess game, one chain per auction. You want to do a decentralized eBay. You want every object the auction of an object to be kind of independent from the rest of the system if you want to scale out. So we would have one chain per auction. So that's kind of the insight, I think. Why I really believe that new use cases they need Linera.
I love that. So final takeaways here. If there's one thing you want listeners to remember about Linera after watching this video, what would it be?
I guess we can go back to the initial idea. Like we are really trying to create the concept of personal chain, going from the time of supercomputers and mainframes to personal computers for transparent computation. So really giving everybody their own microchain.
Well, it's been really fun chatting with you today. It's really fun learning about how Linera seeks to accelerate blockchain growth. I think that it's clear that blockchain is a necessary piece of infrastructure that doesn't just have one thing in mind. There's so many different use cases, and I just encourage you to keep building. It's really fun to see more and more projects continue to come out of the woodwork. Is there anything, aside from technicals, any final words, any closing pieces, any remarks you'd like to share with the viewers that are watching back this video? Anything personally you'd like to share with them from the CEO and founder of Linera?
No, well, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion. I feel like now I need to program the game of life on Linera somehow, and you find a way to make that happen.
Love it, love it. So from learning hard lessons at Libra to innovating with microchains, Linera is indeed aiming to push blockchain scalability to the next level. Thank you, Mathieu, so much for joining us here today. Be sure to follow them on all the socials. Those will be dropped below in the description, as well as if you're viewing this on different platforms, just check below. They'll be there. Definitely get involved with the community. I think Mathieu would probably agree with me, the importance of community, the importance of working together, communicating, and see what can be achieved and accomplished when we work together. Competition is one thing. It helps us be better, but at some point those walls have to break down, and we can really see how we can all work together to really build a much better, more powerful, transparent future. That's what we've got for you today. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks again, Mathieu.
All right. Thanks so much.